Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this new webinar about PRAESENSA, and we are talking today about initial system setup. So today's presenter is myself, Peter Ophey, application engineer in Eindhoven, and also standby here is Jan Pieter, also an application engineer here in Eindhoven. Today's topic, you've seen that initial system setup. Topics will be, we will talk about factory defaults, firmware upload, first access to the system controller, to the system actually, and security, and a demo session and Q&A in the end. So what we will do, I will go through the first setup with PowerPoint. So I'll tell you a lot of things about connections and so, and about security and first access. And then in the demo, we will do a live demo with a system here, and where we do everything that that I show you in the PowerPoints. So that's a bit the setup for today. So the focus of this webinar is initial system setup, so firmware and security settings setup. We are not talking about configuration, system configuration. So we will do a very small part of the configuration, only the beginning, to have access to the system. So we have a separate webinar on how to make your first call, how to do the initial configuration. Yep. I think most of you have done already some online training, so you should know how your power and network connections, how you have to do that. Yeah, so we assume that you know how that works. Yeah, so it starts when you get your equipment, when you have your boxes where the PRAESENSA system is in. And important here is that you first, before you start, that you know what you're doing. You can do that with online trainings, you can do that, we could do that with classroom trainings. But what is a very important issue here is the installation manual. It will tell you a lot. Chapter 4 is especially for installation procedures and the instructions for that. So how to mount everything in a 19-inch cabinet, what the cable requirements are, and also what the network requirements are. So if you open the box, let's start with the system controller. You will find, these are screenshots from the manual. You will find cables there and connectors. Cables that you need for connecting, in this case, it is for power. And quickly we go through the different components. This is the 4 and the 8-channel amplifier. Basically the same. The only thing is that with the 8-channel amplifier, you have a 4-pole speaker connection. And with the 4-channel amplifier, you have a 6-pole speaker connection. For the rest, the cables are the same. And the MPS, you see all the connectors there. For the control inputs, control outputs, lifeline, power connectors. This strange thing is a fuse, a 100 amp fuse. Now the mains cord is nothing new to you. This is the sensor, temperature sensor for the battery. And these are the very thick wires for the battery. So 35 square millimeters. That's a really thick wire. Yep. If you do your setup, if you do your connections, the connections for power would look like this. So you have your power connection from the MPS to the controller, and you have your amplifier power and lifeline also from the MPS to the different amplifiers. Yeah, and then the last part is of course the battery connection over there, and the one that's not shown here is the connection. You see here the fuse, the 100 amp fuse. That is the reason why this bolt is about 1 centimeter longer than the one on the right, because the fuse could go there. So these are the power connections, and these are the network connections. If I go one slide back, here, the power connections, the cables for that are all in the boxes. Yeah. But the network connection, the Ethernet cables are not in the boxes. You have to provide them yourself. But for a small system, this could be the setup. Yeah, you have a redundant loop in the Ethernet. No, this is not a redundant loop, but you can have a redundant loop there if you want. But these cables are not supplied with the equipment. Also, the cables for the call stations are not supplied with the in the boxes what you receive. If you have seen already the presentation on the power calculator, then this is a cluster. Yeah. So in the power calculator we are talking about clusters, and in the cluster you see a controller, 3 amplifiers, an MPS, and 2 call stations, and of course the battery. Yeah, but that's another subject. So factory defaults. If you receive your equipment, yeah, you have the equipment as factory defaults. Yeah, but not always. It could be that you also have a device that is already used in another system. So you have 2 options. The device is new, out of the box, and that means the device is at factory defaults, and it also has factory firmware. That means the system will, the unit will start up, but it doesn't have the actual PRAESENSA's firmware. Yep. It also means that the device has no Omnio security key and no released firmware version. Yep. What I mentioned, it's also possible that you have an existing device already that is being used in another system. Yeah. You could know the Omnio security key. Yeah. But it's also possible that you don't know that key. Yeah, that's also very likely. Now, in both cases, you have to go back to factory defaults. Yeah. Always go back to factory defaults. And after factory defaults, so when you go back to factory defaults, if there is an Omnio security key, that is gone, that is deleted. Also, the configuration in the controller and the message files are deleted, but the firmware version in the device is still there. So that is something we don't delete. Well, how you go to factory defaults is actually simple. If you have a device, a 19-inch device, it has this little reset button, and you press it for about 10 seconds, a little bit more than 10 seconds, and then you see that there is activity on these 2 LEDs that you see here. Yeah. And the moment they start blinking, you can release that little button, and he's in factory defaults. The same for the call station. There is also a hole in the bottom of the call station. It's a little bit deeper, but you have to press that reset button for about 10 seconds. And if you look at the display of the call station, you will see it start flashing. And that means he is at factory default. Mentioned already, the configuration is erased. Pre-recorded messages are erased. Username, password is gone. And also the security key is then gone. It's all deleted, erased. Yeah. So back to factory defaults. Then we go to the firmware upload. You have connected the system, you have connected the power, and you have connected the network. Yeah, so you have a network set up for the system. But at this moment, the system is unsecure. It has no username, it has no password, and it also has no Omnio key, security key, so the passphrase. Yep. You install the firmware upload tool, and you install the PRAESENSA firmware, the latest PRAESENSA firmware. Yep. And then you start the firmware upload tool, and it will open in a window that looks like this. Could be a little bit smaller or wider, but it looks like this. The next step is that you go to File Options, and you go to Firmware Upload Tool Options. Yeah. And you uncheck this box. And when you have a first installation of this program, it is unchecked already. So then you don't have to change anything. Yeah, click OK. And when you have selected unsecure connection, yeah, and you click OK, he will look for the devices again. And now he will show you, the firmware upload tool will show you all connected devices. Yeah, so what you see here is the desktop call station, the wall panel call station, the system controller, amplifier, and the MPS. And if you have more of them, you will have a longer list here. So this is the firmware upload tool, how to start with it. The next thing is that you have to upgrade the different devices. Yep. So what do you do? The first thing that you do when you have access to the system with the firmware upload tool, you go to the system controller. That is the PRAESEL, the system controller large, the L from large. And what you see here, well, you see here, of course, first the IP address, 169.254. That is a linked local address. And the last part is a random address. Yeah, but what's more important here is this part, the device name. Because this device name you need later in the web pages and on other places as well. Yeah, so you write down this name, PRAESEL, and in this case it is -0B4888. Yeah, so you write down, or you write it in a text file. And later on, you need this device name for your web browser, yeah, to have access to the configuration, but also for the logging, you need this name. Now, and then you have to upgrade the different devices. Yeah, so you select one device. Here we have selected an amplifier. Yeah, and you go and you see here, this window will open, and you will see that there is a firmware version inside. You select that firmware version, click start, and the upgrade will start. Yeah, and you will see here in this progress bar that it will take about 1 minute. Yeah, the controller takes a little bit longer. And yeah, you have to wait for that. But yeah, here it is. You have to select the right firmware. You start, and it will take between 1 and 2 minutes. Now, the nice thing is that you can start one, and then you can start the next and the next one, and you can go to the different tabs. You can upload the firmware of all devices at the same time. So you don't have to wait for one to be upgraded. Now you can do everything at the same time. So multiple devices can be upgraded at the same time. When all devices have been upgraded, yeah, you will see that in the version, because then they will all show the same version of firmware. The latest firmware version at this moment is 1.20. When that is the case, you can close the firmware upload tool. And then we go to first access to the system controller. Yep. So everything is connected. Make sure that everything is powered. It's also important. Yeah, connected to the network. Default in the system, RSTP, Rapid Spanning Tree, is always on. So be very careful connecting it already to an existing network. Start your configuration as a separate system connected to nothing else than your PC. Yeah, make sure that all devices are at factory defaults. If you're not sure, just do it again. You don't harm the device. Connect your PC to one of the ports, but it's already connected because the firmware upload tool has already been working. And you already know also that you are using a linked local address. It's also possible to use a DHCP server, but that's another webinar. Yeah, make sure that your PC is set to obtain an IP address automatically, so it is set to DHCP. For Bosch people where linked local is not allowed, what you can do is that you set your network card your PC, to a fixed link local address. That also works. And then first time access to the configuration page. Yep. You have two options, link local or DHCP. And now you need that name that you wrote down, the device name of the controller. PRAESEL, and in this case it is 0B4876. Yeah, you can find it in the firmware upload tool. You can also find it on the label of the controller. It's the last 6 digits of the MAC address. And then your device name is what you see here. Now, to have access to the configuration pages, you have to add something to that. You have to add -control.local. So the URL that you have to type in your web browser looks like this. Yeah, last part of the MAC address, -control.local. Yeah, and then this should then be your opening page. Should look like. Yeah, this is the URL, -control.local. And now we can start with the configuration, the initial setup. Yeah, this is a screen what you get when you click continue on the previous screen. Initial setup. So the system has no username, no password, and it also has no Omnio key, not yet. So you enter a new user, and we use admin here, and the administrator password is admin123. That's a default, what we do default here in the office. And then you click create. And at that moment, you have a username and password in the system. Yeah. Also here, copy the username and password, write it down somewhere or put it in a text file and save it. So don't forget what you put in here. What happens when you click create here, that automatically the Omnio security key is generated. At this moment, the Omnio security key is generated. Yep, and you can check that. Yeah, you can go to, I'm not sure why my screen is not showing. There it is. Go to Omnio security key. So you go to security over there and system security, and you will see there, if you can see my pointer, it's quite big. You see there's a username and there is a very long passphrase. Make sure that you copy this username and passphrase in the text document. You can also write it down somewhere, but it's a very long passphrase, so better copy and paste it in a text document. Yeah. You need this Omnio security key for the firmware upload tool later. Yeah, but your that's a network tool that we have for PRAESENSA and for conference as well. Yeah, but still, you have your username and password, and you have your Omnio security key. The system is still unsecure. The system is still unsecure. Yep. The next step is that you go to system composition. And you go configure system composition. And here you add all PRAESENSA devices. And this is just a small system. You see, we have a controller, we have an amplifier, a call station, and MPS over there. Yeah. When you've done this, all devices are there that you have connected to the system. You click submit, and you go to configure save configuration and click save configuration and restart. So you have to do save configuration and restart. After the restart, your system will have, all the devices will have an Omnio security key, and now the system is secure. Yeah, because all devices in the system now have this Omnio security key. Yeah, and if you don't have the Omnio security key, you cannot eavesdrop on the network and listen into what is happening on the network. So the system is now secure. All devices have the security key. Now, you've seen that security key. It is a username and a passphrase, and it is a quite complicated username already, and it is a very, very long password. And what we most of the time do is that you can change it. Yeah, you can change it. First of all, you can generate a new one. If you don't like this one, you get a new one if you click on generate. But basically, you get an identical, different passphrase, but it doesn't change the length of everything. So it's still a very complicated passphrase. Or, and that's what we most of the time do here in the office to make life easy, we just type in a username and passphrase here in the office that everybody knows. Yeah, and that is PRAESENSA minus PSK and admin123. Easy to remember for us. Yeah, when you've done that, you click change and then save configuration and restart. And now the whole system will have this new username and passphrase. And don't forget to write it down somewhere in a text file. But you see now the passphrase and the username is much easier. You can almost remember it. So, system is up and running now. You can start your configuration. You can also add new devices. You can also add new devices to the system. Yeah, when the system is expanding or you forgot a device. Yeah, make sure that it is factory defaults. If it has an Omnio security key, it doesn't work. You first have to go to factory defaults, add the device to the configuration, and then save and restart the system. Yeah, automatically it will get the Omnio security key. If you have a device that's coming from another system or it has been used in another system, you can also add it. You can also add it. You go to security and reconnect default devices. Yeah, and you will have a 5-minute window to connect this device. Yeah, and this device is known. It says there it's the device name is already known in the configuration. So that means this device has been disconnected. Perhaps it's repaired for some reason, and it comes back into the configuration. So the device name is still there, but the key is gone. So when you connect this device, then you still have a 5-minute window to connect the device, and it will receive the Omnio security key, and it will be part of the system again. You only have to save and restart the configuration. Oh, you don't have to restart the system. It will be recognized automatically. Now, the system has a username and password, and the system has a security key. Now, the next time, if you have to do an upgrade of the system, you have to use the firmware upload tool again. Yeah, but now the system has a security key, so the firmware upload tool cannot get in anymore. Yeah, so it works like this. How can we solve this? First, start the firmware upload tool, and once it is started, you go to firmware upload tool options. Yeah, and now you have to select here, use a secure connection. Make sure that you tick this box. And then you have to go to manage security users and add a new user. And you have to then enter here the security key properties. And we've changed it to PRAESENSA PSK, minus PSK. And the passphrase is admin123. Yeah, so PRAESENSA minus PSK, admin123. And you have to confirm that passphrase. And the last thing you have to do here is that you have to select the username PRAESENSA minus PSK. Click OK. Click OK here. And then you will have access again to all the devices. If you don't do this, you will not see a device. All devices will be gone. It's an empty screen that you get then. So much for the explanation of everything. Go to the demo. And for the demo, I start with the firmware upload tool. Yep. And here is the firmware upload tool. And what you see here are all the devices that are connected. I'm now connected to a live system here. So I can go here to the different devices. It's a small system, one amplifier, one MPS, a controller, and a desktop call station. What you also see here is that the firmware version in the different devices is 1.20, the latest firmware version. If I go to my file options, I have to have it here. You see that I'm using an unsecure connection. The whole system is in factory default, so it has no passphrase. So I have to select here an unsecure selection. Yep. But what is important here? I can close this. What is important here? That is this. That is the name of the controller, 0B4876. Yeah. And now I go to my web browser. Here it is. And you see here in the URL 0B4876 minus control.local. And if you go to this controller, this will be the opening screen. It also will show you that the system is running on 1.20. And I can select the language. And I can click continue. And here is the initial setup screen. Yep, device name, system controller. And the new administrator, the username is, I'll just keep it simple, admin. And the password is admin123. And I click create. So now I have a username and password. At the moment, also the security key is generated. Yeah, so I can check that. Yeah. And I go to my security, and you will see here there is a username for the security key, and there is that very long passphrase. Yeah. And now I have two options here. I can change my Omnio security key when I've started my configuration, but I can also do it now at this moment. Yeah, before I do the configuration. In the presentation, I showed you that you can do it in the end. But let's do it here right away. So I go to change username and password and passphrase, sorry. I can generate here a new one, but I'm going to create a new one, a new username, and it's called PRAESENSA minus PSK. And the passphrase is very simple, admin123. And I click change. I'll just wait, and there it is. The username and passphrase is now Praesensa -psk admin123. The advantage of this is that when I now add devices to the configuration, they will automatically get this passphrase. Yeah. So we go to our configuration. System composition. Yeah, and here is always the system controller. Yeah, I have to select the host name. There is only one controller, so I'll select this one. And the location, I'll just call it demo. And I can add all the devices in my system. I have an amp, and it is a 4-channel amp. I can add that, and I have to select the host name. That's this one. And I'll just give it the name demo. I can add my MPS. Yeah, I have to select device type, add, and I select my MPS over there. Give the name. And the last thing is the call station desktop. So I select here call station, click add, select the call station, and type in demo there. So this is my system. This is my demo system that I've connected now. I have a controller, an amplifier, an MPS power supply, and a call station. And I can submit this. This is the system. Everything is connected. And now I go to Save Configuration and click Save Configuration and Restart. System is restarting now. It will take about 10 seconds. Perhaps a little bit longer. But the start of the configuration is now there. Now, I have a username and password. It's admin123. So I should be able to get in. There it is. And here is my system composition. All devices now have the security key. And I can start my configuration. And the start of the configuration is the topic for a next webinar that we have. And that's called Creating Your First Call. So then we will go through the whole configuration. And in the end, we do save and restart. And the system is working and we can start a call. But now I have to go back to my firmware upload tool. Because if I go to my firmware upload tool and I go to options, oh, it's on another screen, one moment. Yep, and I click OK. All devices are gone. All devices have the Omnio security key, and the firmware upload tool has no Omnio security key. So we have to add that. So I go to options again. Not sure why. Yeah. I select secure connection and I go to manage security users. And you see, I already have created this Praesensa -psk. But normally you have to do that yourself. Yeah. So I have the Praesensa PSK, the username, and the password is admin123. I click OK. And I select this new username, Praesensa PSK. So the firmware upload tool now has the same key as the system. So if I now click OK and wait a few seconds, all devices should come back. And there they are. Yep. So I see my controller, I see my call station, desktop call station, I see my amplifier, and I see my MPS. I see the version 1.20. I see the device names, but the only device name that is really important is the device name of the controller. What we sometimes see is that the device names are not there. And then it says model 1, model 2, model 3 instead of the device name on the tab on the top of the list here. That indicates that you did not install PRAESENSA firmware. The moment you install the PRAESENSA firmware, that model name will disappear and you will get the actual names of the controller and the desktop call station and the amplifiers. Yeah, but don't forget to add the Omnio security key also to the firmware upload tool.
Thanks, everybody. Like I said before, you will get the presentation after this webinar is closed. So thanks for joining, and have a nice day.
Okay, thank you for joining here. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Stay healthy. Goodbye.